Join us right now to take a deeper look at the markets and the Fed's rate path. Jason Trennert is here, chairman of Strategas Research Partners, a Baird company. What do you think? You think a hike is even possible here?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I'm kind of happy that Mr. Kashkari is keeping some mystery into this process, because I feel very strongly the Fed is saying too much and has said too much. I know there's a big interest in forward guidance. But when I started growing up in the business, it was like white smoke, black smoke type stuff. Right. And it was better, in my opinion. Forward guidance. Because they're wrong a lot of times and they have to backtrack? Because, in my opinion, I don't think they're. You said it more harshly than I would. But I would just say. It's hard to predict. Things change. Of course. And if you're telling everybody this is. I don't think they know any better than anyone else, really. They have a lot of, they have 400 PhDs there, and they're very bright. It's very model-driven. But by the same token, I'm not sure. Forward guidance works when people have a lot of confidence that the Fed knows more than other people. Forward guidance works the other way when people are not so sure that they know what's going on. So
you just think he's trying to give you a head fake?
No, I think he's just trying to keep them honest, which I think is good, because I think, a lot of people have gotten the inflation thing wrong over the last couple of years, not the least of which is the Fed, and I think it shows some sort of humility on their part, which is good.
Right now?
My own opinion is I would do precisely what he's talking about, which is to keep rates exactly where they are. And I wouldn't try to call balls and, I would call balls and strikes. I wouldn't try to really anticipate what the data is going to be, because I think there are real, I think there's continue to be upward pressures on inflation, which are not going to go away anytime soon.
And so when you think about where we are come election time, dare I say, in this year that we're what do you think it looks like? You think it's nothing? There's nothing happens in the year of 2024.
Well, having said all this, that's one person on the FOMC. My own opinion is that the Fed wants to ease. I think they're likely going to ease. I think Jay Powell wants to ease. So I think it's likely that we'll get an easing in September. I'm not so sure that's going to be the right answer. It's my own opinion, because I think there are structural reasons why inflation is going to stay higher longer. There is an enormous historical precedent that says that once you have one wave of inflation over 6%, you get a second wave. The chances are about 9 and 10 that happens. It's largely because of the way contracts are written and wages tend to lag. So I would try to tap the brakes a bit if I were the Fed. But who am I? I'm just a market guy, but I'm interested in the system, and I'd like to see.
Why September at this point, though?
Well, I think that
we've always said once you get to September, it actually gets harder to do this.
Yeah, it's true. The only thing I would say, Andrew, is that I'm not sure the data is going to improve enough between now and the next. I'm not sure. Do we have two more meetings? Maybe one more meeting?
Right. They probably have to see at least 3 months
of data to get better for them to think about it. Then there's also the next meeting after that is the day after the election. So then you take politics completely out of it, which is probably not the worst thing either. That wouldn't be, in my opinion, that would probably be ideal. I don't think there's any rush, though, because I'm not sure that the chances of deflation are particularly high, which is to say, I think the costs of going too early are greater than the costs of going too late at this stage.
Why do you think, I don't know if you saw, there was a study over the weekend that showed that more Americans think that we are in a recession than, we're not in a recession, but they actually think we're in a recession. Why do you think that is?
Well, one of the things, and is a little plug for some of the work that we've been doing, but we've created a common man CPI. And what we do is we go the opposite of core. We just included things that are truly core, like eating, staying warm. So it's food, energy, shelter, clothing, insurance, and utilities. And that has grown much faster than wages. It's the cumulative effect of inflation that people are responding to.
I don't disagree with you, but I wonder when people say the word recession and they think they're in recession, is that a function of misinformation, that they're reading and watching the wrong things? Is that a function? Are they saying to themselves, I feel like I'm in a recession?
I think it
doesn't feel like...
Yeah, no, we're not, by any standard, we're not close to recession.
And so it's shocking to me that so many Americans think that.
The thing is, though, the Fed has largely outlawed recessions. So most people are not familiar with the term. They're not familiar that really recession.
There's an argument about what a recession even is, and we have been saying for a while that there are pockets of the economy that are in recession. If you look at commercial real estate, if you look at other areas where they see those things, so maybe that's partially.
I just think if you're an average guy, you're worse off than you were 3 years ago. I think your spending power is significantly worse than it was. And to you, you could define that as a recession. Real recession, I think, is when you lose your job.
No, a recession is when your neighbor loses your job.
Right, depression is when you lose your job. Precisely.
So there's always been a very.
So I think, Andrew, I'm not sure it's misinformation. I just think people have become so unfamiliar with the terms that they're not slicing and dicing the terms semantically.
I know you're making the cumulative argument. By the way, it makes a lot of sense. But trend line in terms of where we are today is in a much better place. And the truth is, most of the people who are watching this broadcast, you included,